A chance she could not refuse. Jasmine Reed pressed her forehead against the cool window of the subway car. Watching the lights of Manhattan blur past like falling stars, her reflection stared back at her, tired eyes shadowed by another sleepless night spent. Juggling assignments for her journalism degree and shifts at 3 different part-time jobs. At 24, she had learned that dreams required sacrifice, and she was willing to pay that price. Her phone buzzed with a text from Grace, her best friend and roommate. "Girl, I got you a gig tonight. $400 for 6 hours serving at some fancy fundraiser in Tribeca." You in Jasmine's heart jumped. $400 meant she could finally pay the overdue portion of her tuition and still have enough left for groceries. Her fingers flew across the screen. "Absolutely. Send me the details."
Yes.
What she did not know was that this single decision would unravel everything she thought she understood about love, class, and the invisible walls that separated people in this city. Entering another universe? Address Grace sent led Jasmine to a gleaming glass tower that seemed to pierce the New York skyline. The doorman, dressed more elegantly than anyone in her neighborhood, directed her to the service elevator with a polite but distant smile that reminded her exactly why she was there. As the elevator climbed 40 stories, Jasmine felt her stomach tighten with nervous anticipation. When the doors opened directly into the penthouse, she stepped into a world that seemed lifted from the pages of a magazine she could never afford to buy. Floor-toothing windows offered a breathtaking panorama of the city, while modern art pieces that probably cost more than her mother's annual salary decorated the walls. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over guests who moved through the space with the easy confidence of people who had never questioned their place in the world. "You must be one of the servers." A sharp voice cut through Jasmine's moment of awe. A woman in her mid-40s, wearing a designer suit and an expression of practiced superiority, approached with a clipboard. "I'm Patricia Whitmore, the event coordinator. Let me be very clear about the expectations tonight." Jasmine listened as Patricia laid out the rules, but one phrase stuck in her mind like a thorn. "You need to be invisible. Our guests are here to network and enjoy themselves, not to be reminded that hired help is necessary for their comfort." The words stung more than Patricia probably intended. Jasmine had spent her entire life being seen as less than, but she had never been asked to actively erase herself before. Still, she needed this money. She nodded and took her place among the other servers, balancing a tray of champagne glasses that probably cost more than her monthly rent. When pride meets prejudice for the first hour, Jasmine moved through the crowd with careful efficiency, offering drinks and can-apps while absorbing fragments of conversations about stock portfolios, vacation homes in the Hamptons, and charity galas that cost more to attend than most people earned in a year. She studied the guests like a journalist gathering research, noting the power dynamics, the subtle competitions, the performance of wealth. That was when Patricia found her again, this time with malice gleaming in her eyes. "Excuse me," Patricia announced loudly enough to draw attention from nearby guests, "but you are not supposed to be mingling in this area. The service staff should remain in the designated zones." Jasmine felt heat rise to her cheeks. She had been standing exactly where Patricia had initially instructed her to stand. This was not about protocol. This was about power and the pleasure some people took in wielding it against those they considered beneath them. "I apologize," Jasmine said quietly, maintaining her dignity even as humiliation washed over her. "I was following the instructions you gave earlier." Patricia's smile was cold and calculating. "Well, perhaps you were not paying attention properly. Although given your background, I suppose that's to be expected." The implication hung in the air like poison. Several guests had stopped their conversations to watch the scene unfold, some with uncomfortable expressions, others with the detached curiosity of people observing drama that did not touch their lives. Jasmine opened her mouth to respond, but a deep male voice interrupted.
"Actually, Patricia,
I believe you are the one who is confused." The man who broke the pattern, Daniel. Shefford appeared beside them with the kind of presence that commanded immediate attention. Tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than Jasmine's entire wardrobe, he nonetheless carried himself with an ease that set him apart from the other wealthy guests. His dark eyes held intelligence, and something else Jasmine could not quite identify. Kindness, perhaps, or weariness. Jasmine is exactly where she is supposed to be, Daniel continued, his voice calm but carrying an authority that made Patricia visibly flinch. I specifically requested the most professional servers be positioned near the main gallery. Is there a problem with that arrangement? Patricia's face cycled through shock, embarrassment, and forced composure. Of course not, Mr. Ashford. I was simply ensuring everything was running smoothly. My apologies for any confusion. She disappeared into the crowd so quickly she practically evaporated, leaving Jasmine standing there with her heart pounding and her mind racing. Who was this man who had just defended her? And more importantly, why had he bothered? I hope I did not overstep, Daniel said, turning to face her fully. Up close, she noticed the fine lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though his expression now was serious. But what she was doing was completely out of line. Thank you, Jasmine managed, her professional composure cracking slightly. You did not have to do that. Maybe not, he agreed, but standing by while someone is being treated poorly has never been something I am good at. A conversation that shifted everything the party continued around them. But for a moment, it felt like they were standing in a bubble, separate from all the noise and pretension. Daniel studied her with genuine curiosity, not the predatory interest she sometimes encountered from wealthy men who saw servers as entertainment. Are not like the usual staff they hire for these events, he observed. The way you were watching everyone earlier, you were analyzing, learning. That is not the look of someone just trying to get through a shift. Jasmine was surprised, he had noticed. I am a journalism student. I guess I cannot turn off the observation habit. Journalism, Daniel repeated, and something lit up in his expression. That is impressive. Columbia, NYU. City College, Jasmine corrected, watching for the subtle change in his expression that usually came when people from this world learned she attended a public university. But Daniel's interest only seemed to deepen. That is even more impressive, he said. You are paying your own way, I assume? Before Jasmine could answer, another server signaled that she was needed in the kitchen. She excused herself, but throughout the rest of the evening, she found her eyes searching for Daniel in the crowd. And every time she looked, he was looking back. The moment of truth as the party wound down near midnight. Jasmine was collecting empty glasses from the terrace when Daniel appeared beside her again. I know this is probably crossing about a dozen social boundaries, he said. But would you consider having coffee with me sometime? Somewhere far away from this world, where we could just talk like normal people? Jasmine should have said no. Everything about this situation screamed complication. But there was something in his eyes, a loneliness that mirrored her own, that made her ignore every warning voice in her head. Okay, she heard herself say. Coffee, just talking. Daniel smiled and it transformed his entire face. Just talking? He agreed. Although I should probably mention, I am terrible at small talk. I tend to ask big questions right away. Fair warning. I think I can handle that, Jasmine replied, surprising herself with her own boldness as she rode the subway home hours later, exhausted but somehow energized. Jasmine had no idea that this simple agreement to meet for coffee would test everything she believed about love, integrity, and the price of crossing invisible social boundaries. She did not know that within weeks, she would be facing impossible choices that would define not just her relationship with Daniel, but her understanding of who she was and what she truly valued. All she knew was that for the first time in years, someone had looked at her and seen not a server, not a struggling student, not someone to be dismissed or pitied, but simply a person worth knowing, and that feeling, dangerous as it might be, was intoxicating. Coffee and Confessions, the small cafe in Brooklyn where they met 3 days later, was about as far from the Tribeca penthouse as 2 locations in the same city could be. Jasmine arrived 15 minutes early, a habit formed by years of knowing she could not afford to miss opportunities because of bad timing. She ordered the cheapest item on the menu and sat by the window, watching the neighborhood go about its ordinary Tuesday afternoon. When Daniel walked through the door, she noticed how different he looked in jeans and a simple sweater. He carried himself with less of that commanding presence from the fundraiser. It's more like someone who was trying to blend in but did not quite know how. He spotted her immediately, and his face broke into that genuine smile she remembered. "I was worried you might change your mind," he admitted, sliding into the seat across from her. "I almost did," Jasmine confessed. "About 6 times, but curiosity won." Their conversation started cautiously, dancing around the obvious differences between them. But within 20 minutes, they had fallen into a rhythm that felt strangely natural. Daniel asked about her journalism studies, and when she explained her focus on economic inequality and social justice reporting, his interest was unmistakably real. "So you were planning to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable," he said with an approving nod. "That is brave." "The comfortable tend to fight back." "Speaking from experience?" Jasmine asked. Daniel's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "My family owns Ashford Technologies. We make software systems for financial institutions. I am technically the vice president of innovation, which mostly means I sit in meetings and pretend to be excited about profit margins." The confession hung between them. Jasmine had heard of Ashford Technologies. They were one of the biggest tech companies in the country, worth billions. She was having coffee with someone who probably had more money in his checking account than she would earn in her lifetime. "You do not sound very excited about it," she observed carefully. "I am not," Daniel said, and the honesty in his voice surprised her. "I wanted to be a social worker. I wanted to help kids in the foster care system, work with underprivileged communities, use whatever advantages I had to actually make a difference. But my father made it very clear that Ashford men do not throw away their legacy on charity work." Secrets and shadows. Over the next 2 weeks, Jasmine and Daniel fell into a pattern of secret meetings. Coffee turned into dinners at quiet restaurants far from Manhattan's social scene. Dinners turned into long walks through neighborhoods where no one recognized Daniel's face or cared about his last name. They texted constantly, sharing thoughts and jokes, and the kind of vulnerable confessions that people usually reserve for much later in relationships. Jasmine introduced him to her world slowly. The cramped apartment in Queens she shared with Grace, where 3 people split the rent and still struggled to make it work. The late-night shifts at the diner where she served eggs and coffee to insomniacs and taxi drivers. The university library where she spent every spare moment researching and writing, chasing the dream of becoming a journalist who could tell stories that mattered. Daniel, in turn, revealed the golden cage of his existence. The pressure from his family to marry someone appropriate, preferably from another wealthy family that could strengthen business alliances. The exhausting performance of being constantly watched and judged by society pages and business journals. The loneliness of never knowing if people liked him or his bank account. "With you, it is different," he told her one evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking the East River. "You knew nothing about me that first night. You had no agenda, no expectations. You just saw me." Jasmine leaned against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. "I still see you. Just you." But the universe was preparing to test that declaration in ways she could not imagine. The investigation begins. Jasmine first noticed something was wrong when her mother called. Voice tight with worry. "Baby, something strange happened today," Rita Reed said. A woman came to the hospital, claimed she was doing a story about working mothers putting their kids through college. But the questions she asked were so specific, so personal. "She knew about your father leaving, about our debts, about places we lived 10 years ago." Ice flooded Jasmine's veins. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing important." But Jasmine, I did not like it. She was not a real journalist. I have been around enough reporters at the hospital to know. This woman was digging for something. After hanging up, Jasmine sat frozen in her tiny bedroom, pieces clicking into place. The car she had noticed parked outside her building for the past week. The strange feeling of being watched when she left for class. The way her landlord had suddenly asked unexpected questions about her personal life. She texted Daniel immediately. "We need to talk now." They met at a park in Chelsea, far enough from both their worlds to feel neutral. Daniel took one look at her face and knew something was seriously wrong. "Someone is investigating me," Jasmine said without preamble. "Investigating my family? My background? My life? Please tell me you did not know about this." The guilt that flashed across Daniel's face was answer enough. "I did not authorize it," he said quickly. "But I suspected my mother might do something like this. She has done it before with other women I have dated. I should have warned you." "I am so sorry," your mother, Jasmine repeated, each word sharp as broken glass. "Your mother hired someone to invade my privacy, to harass my mother at her workplace, to dig through my entire life like I am some kind of criminal. She thinks she is protecting me," Daniel said miserably. "She thinks everyone who is not from our world is after money or connections. And what do you think?" Jasmine asked, the question heavy with challenge. Daniel reached for her hands. "I think you are the realest person I have ever met. I think you challenge me to be better. I think I am falling in love with you, and it terrifies my family, because you represent everything they cannot control." The confrontation Margaret Ashford did not wait long to make her move. 2 days after Jasmine discovered the investigation, a sleek black car pulled up outside her apartment building. The driver delivered a handwritten note on expensive stationery. "Miss Reed, I believe it is time we spoke. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the Carlisle. Margaret Ashford." It was not a request. Jasmine arrived at the legendary hotel with her heart pounding, but her spine straight. She had dressed in her best interview outfit, simple but professional, refusing to be intimidated. The hostess led her to a private dining room where Margaret Ashford sat like a queen holding court. She was elegant in the way only old money could achieve. Her gray hair styled perfectly, her jewelry understated but obviously expensive. Her eyes were sharp and assessing as they traveled over Jasmine from head to toe. "Miss Reed, thank you for coming," Margaret said, gesturing to the seat across from her. "I assume you know why I wanted to speak with you. I assume it has something to do with the private investigator you hired to stalk me and my family," Jasmine replied. Keeping her voice steady, Margaret's lips curved in something that was not quite a smile. "Direct. I appreciate that. Let me be equally direct. My son is infatuated with you. It happens sometimes with young men of his position. They become fascinated by novelty, by the idea of slumming it with someone from a different world. It makes them feel rebellious, alive." Each word was calculated to wound, and they hit their marks. But Jasmine had grown up fighting, and she was not about to crumble now. "You think I am a phase?" she said flatly. "I think you are a distraction," Margaret corrected. "A charming one, I am sure, but ultimately temporary. Daniel has responsibilities, expectations, a future that was planned long before you served drinks at that fundraiser." "Does Daniel know about these plans?" Jasmine asked. "He knows his duty," Margaret replied. "He may be rebelling now, but eventually he will come back to reality. They always do." The offer she could not believe. Margaret opened an elegant leather folder and slid a check across the table. Jasmine's breath caught when she saw the amount. $200,000. "This is enough to finish your degree, pay off your mother's debts, set yourself up comfortably," Margaret said. "All you have to do is walk away from my son. Cleanly, completely. Tell him it was nice, but you realize the differences between you are too great. Let him move on with his life." Yes. It represented everything she had been struggling for. Security for her mother. Freedom from constant financial stress. The ability to focus on her studies without working 3 jobs. It was the answer to years of prayers. It was also the price Margaret Ashford had calculated for her dignity. "And if I refuse?" Jasmine asked quietly. Margaret's expression hardened. "Then things become complicated. Your mother's hospital has been having budget issues. Her position is not as secure as she thinks. Your university financial aid requires maintaining certain standards. It would be unfortunate if questions arose about your eligibility. Your landlord is considering selling that building. The new owners might not be as flexible about late rent payments." The threats were delivered with surgical precision, wrapped in polite concern. This was not just an offer. It was economic warfare disguised as generosity. "You would destroy my life because your son has feelings for me," Jasmine said, anger finally breaking through her control. "I would do whatever necessary to protect my family," Margaret corrected. "You are a bright girl, Miss Reed. Surely you can see this relationship has no future." You will always be the girl from Queens who served drinks. Society will never fully accept you. My family will never embrace you. Eventually, Daniel will realize what a burden you are, and the resentment will poison whatever affection he feels now. I am offering you a way out that preserves your dignity and secures your future. The decision that changes everything. Jasmine left the Carlisle in a daze, the check burning in her purse like a live coal. She walked for hours through Manhattan, her mind churning. Everything Margaret said had the ring of uncomfortable truth. She did not belong in Daniel's world. She never would. But she also thought about the conversations she and Daniel had shared, the way he listened when she talked about her dreams, the respect in his eyes when she challenged his assumptions, the vulnerability he showed when describing his own trapped existence. Was that all just a rich man's temporary fascination, as Margaret claimed? Grace found her sitting on their apartment steps near midnight. "Girl, you look like you have seen a ghost," Grace said, sitting beside her. "What happened?" Jasmine told her everything. The investigation, the confrontation, the check, the threats. When she finished, Grace was quiet for a long moment. "That is a lot of money," Grace finally said. "I know. Your mom would be set. You could finish school without killing yourself working." "I know, but you are not going to take it, are you?" Jasmine looked at her best friend, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "How can I? If I take that money, everything Margaret said becomes true. I become the girl who was with Daniel for what I could get. I prove that love has a price, and mine is $200,000. So what are you going to do?" Jasmine pulled out her phone and typed a message to Daniel. "I need to see you. Your place. Tonight, there is something I need to tell you about your mother." Truth and consequences. Daniel's penthouse apartment was nothing like the fundraiser venue where they had first met. It was smaller, more personal, filled with books and art that reflected actual interests rather than designer taste. When he opened the door and saw Jasmine's face, he immediately pulled her inside. "What happened?" he asked, genuine concern in his voice. Jasmine told him everything, watching his expression shift from shock to fury to something that looked like resignation. When she finished, she pulled the check from her purse and placed it on his coffee table. "Your mother thinks this is what I am worth," she said quietly. $200,000 to disappear from your life." Daniel stared at the check like it was a snake. "I am going to call her right now and tell her exactly what I think of this." "Wait," Jasmine said, catching his arm. "Before you do that, I need to know something. Is she right?" "About what?" "About us. About this being temporary. About me not fitting into your world." Jasmine forced herself to meet his eyes. "Because I have been thinking about it, and maybe she has a point. We are from completely different universes. Eventually, that is going to cause problems we cannot fix with good intentions and attraction." Daniel was quiet for a long moment, and Jasmine felt her heart sink. But when he finally spoke, his voice was steady and sure. "My mother is right about one thing. You do not fit into my world. But here is what she does not understand. I do not want to live in that world anymore. I have been trapped in it my entire life, playing a role I never wanted, following a script I never wrote. Then I met you, and for the first time, I saw what life could be like if I had the courage to choose it for myself. The stand that shook everything, what happened next unfolded over 72 hours that felt like a lifetime. Daniel did not just call his mother. He called a family meeting requiring both parents and his younger sister to attend. Jasmine waited in a cafe nearby, too nervous to stay home, but not invited to the confrontation. Grace sat with her, alternating between supportive silence and nervous chatter. "Whatever happens, you know you did the right thing, right? You could have taken that money and run. Nobody would have blamed you. It would have blamed me," Jasmine replied. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "It is done. Coming to get you." When he arrived at the cafe, he looked exhausted, but somehow lighter, as if he had put down a weight he had been carrying for years. "I told him everything," he said, sliding into the booth beside her. "About the investigation, the threats, the attempted payoff. My father tried to justify it as protecting family interests. My mother insisted she was doing what was necessary. So I told them that if they could not respect my choices and the woman I love, they would have to run the company without me.
Jasmine's breath caught.
Daniel, you did not quit. Not exactly. I gave them an ultimatum. Either they accept that I am going to live my life on my terms with the partner I choose, or I walk away from Ashford Technologies and all the family money that comes with it. You cannot do that, Jasmine protested. That is your entire life, your security. Daniel took her hands, his grip warm and solid. No, that is their life. Their security. I have a degree in computer science and real-world skills. I have savings that are actually mine, not just access to family accounts. And I have something much more important than money. I have you, if you will have me. When past meets future, the following weeks were turbulent. Margaret Ashford did not take her son's defiance quietly. She tried freezing his access to certain family accounts, which backfired when Daniel simply opened new ones. She attempted to use business connections to damage his reputation. But too many people in the tech world respected Daniel's actual skills over his family name. Most significantly, she tried one last time to drive a wedge between Daniel and Jasmine by leaking their relationship to society gossip columns. The articles were predictably cruel, painting Jasmine as a gold digger and Daniel as a naive fool having a quarter-life crisis. Jasmine woke up to text messages from classmates she barely knew, asking if the stories were true. Her mother called in tears, worried about the attention. Even Grace looked overwhelmed by the sudden spotlight on their quiet lives. Maybe your mother was right, Jasmine said to Daniel that evening. They were hiding in his apartment, avoiding the photographers who had started camping outside her building. Maybe I am not strong enough for this, Daniel said firmly, tilting her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. You are the strongest person I know. You have survived things my family cannot even imagine. Some tabloid gossip does not define you. It is not just the gossip, Jasmine admitted. It is everything. Your whole life is changing because of me. Your family hates me. Society thinks I am using you. What if everyone is right? What if I am being selfish, letting you throw away your life for someone who does not belong in your world? Daniel pulled her close, and she felt the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. You want to know what I did today? He asked. I had lunch with the director of a nonprofit that builds affordable housing in underserved communities. We talked about me joining their board, using my tech background to help them modernize their operations and reach more families. It is exactly the kind of work I have always wanted to do, but never had the courage to pursue. He pulled back enough to look at her face. You did not make me throw away my life, Jasmine. You gave me permission to finally start living it. The moment of truth that night, as they sat together in the quiet of his apartment, the city lights twinkling through the windows, Jasmine felt something shift between them. The tension of the past weeks, the intensity of everything they had faced, had created an intimacy that went beyond the physical. Daniel traced patterns on her hand, his touch gentle. Can I ask you something personal? After everything we have been through, I think you have earned that right, Jasmine said with a soft smile. Have you ever been in love before?
Really in?
Love, not just dating or attraction. Jasmine shook her head. I have been so focused on survival and school that I never had time for serious relationships. A few dates here and there, but nothing that felt real. She paused, gathering courage. Nothing like this. Daniel's eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. I need you to know something. Whatever happens between us, however far this goes, I will never take you for granted. I will never assume or pressure or expect anything from you. You set the pace. You decide what you are comfortable with. Tenderness in his voice, the respect in his words, cracked something open inside Jasmine. She had spent so long being strong, being independent, proving she did not need anyone. But maybe needing someone was not weakness. Maybe letting someone in was the bravest thing she could do. Daniel, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. I need to tell you something. I've never really done this before. Any of this. The relationship part. The intimacy part. You are my first everything that matters. She watched his face carefully, waiting for disappointment or surprise or the kind of pressure that often came with such confessions. Instead, his expression softened into something so tender it made her eyes sting. "Then I am the luckiest man alive," he said simply. "Guess, you are trusting me with something precious, and I promise I will treat that trust like the treasure it is." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gentle against her cheeks. "We do not have to do anything tonight, or any night, until you are absolutely ready. There is no timeline, no expectations. I am just honored that you feel safe enough with me to tell me." Jasmine felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they were not sad tears. For the first time in her life, she felt truly seen. Not as a struggling student or a server or someone from the wrong side of the tracks, just as Jasmine, worthy of patience and tenderness and respect. "I think I am ready," she whispered. "Not because I feel pressured, but because I trust you, because I love you, because I want this to be my choice with you." What happened next was private and sacred, but the aftermath spoke volumes. It held her close as the city lights flickered outside. His arms protective but not possessive, and Jasmine felt something settle deep in her soul. She had made the right choice, not just about this moment, but about everything. About standing up to Margaret Ashford, about refusing to let money define her worth, about believing that love could transcend the boundaries society tried to impose. The resolution 3 months later, Daniel stood in front of a small audience at a community center in the Bronx, announcing the launch of his new foundation. The Ashford Reed Initiative, named to honor both his legacy and Jasmine's influence, would focus on providing technology, education, and job training to underserved communities. Jasmine sat in the front row between her mother and Grace, watching the man she loved step fully into the person he had always wanted to be. Rita Reed squeezed her daughter's hand, tears of pride in her eyes. Margaret and Thomas Ashford sat stiffly in the back row. The relationship was still strained, probably always would be. But they had shown up, which was something. Margaret had even sent a brief, formal note to Jasmine the week before. Not quite an apology, but an acknowledgement that perhaps she had misjudged the situation. After the presentation, as people mingled and celebrated, Daniel found Jasmine and pulled her aside. "I have something to tell you," he said, and there was nervous energy in his voice that made her heart skip. "Should I be worried?" she teased. "I hope not." He took both her hands. "I talked to my parents last week. Really talked, not just argued. I told them that I am going to ask you to marry me someday. Not today, not until you finish school and start your journalism career and feel ready, but someday, and I wanted them to hear it from me first." Jasmine felt her breath catch. "What did they say?" "My father said I am throwing away my legacy. My mother said I am making the biggest mistake of my life." Daniel smiled. "Then my sister called me later and said, I am the bravest person she knows. She hopes she finds someone who makes her as happy as you make me." "That is 2 against 1, Jasmine observed. "Actually, I think my mother is starting to come around. She asked about your mother, about her work at the hospital. It was brief and awkward, but it was something." Jasmine looked around the community. Center at the teenagers excitedly exploring the computers Daniel's foundation had donated, at the parents grateful for new opportunities for their children, at the proof that love and determination could create real change. "You know what I think?" she said, turning back to Daniel. "I think your mother was wrong about me being a phase. But she was also kind of right about one thing." "What is that?" "I do not fit into your old world. But we are building a new one together. One where it does not matter if you grew up in a penthouse or a cramped apartment. One where what you do matters more than who your parents are. One where love is measured by respect and partnership, not by matching bank accounts." Daniel pulled her close, and she felt the solid certainty of his embrace. "When did you become so wise?" "I have always been wise," Jasmine replied with a grin. "You just had enough sense to notice." As they stood together, surrounded by the community they were building and the future they were choosing, Jasmine thought about that night at the fundraiser when she had been told to be invisible, how far she had come from that moment, how much she had discovered about her own strength, her own worth, her own capacity for love that did not compromise her integrity. She had admitted it was her first time, in more ways than one. It's first time risking her heart completely. First time standing up to people with power and money. First time believing she deserved to be treated like treasure. And Daniel had proven, with every action in every choice. That she was right to take that risk. The billionaire had seen her when others demanded she disappear. He had defended her when others tried to diminish her. He had respected her boundaries and honored her choices. He had treated her first time with the tenderness and care it deserved. But most importantly, he had recognized that true treasure was not measured in dollars or social status. It was measured in authenticity, courage, and the willingness to build something real together, brick by brick, choice by choice, with love as the foundation, and that. Jasmine thought as she looked into Daniel's eyes and saw her future reflected there. Was worth more than all the money in the world.